Welcome to the Grassroots Army Podcast. This platform is for common sense people looking for up-to-date, accurate, and truthful information without the hot garbage corporate media bias. The power of one can lead to the power of many. You never know what small act that you may say or do that may literally change the lives of millions tomorrow. And don't you ever think that you can't make a difference, because you can. Good morning, my fellow Michiganders. Good morning, my fellow Americans. It's been a while since I've seen you all. Welcome to the Grassroots Army Podcast. I'm, of course, your host, Garrett Sodano, and you can tell, got a little bit of a haircut going on. That is for sure. Getting lean and mean for the fall. Deer hunting is upon us, but let's get to something that is in my wheelhouse. I'm very passionate about, and President Trump literally just dropped a red pill nuclear bomb over on Truth Social. Now I'm going to show you the video that he shared. So let me explain to you the background, and I'm going to play a little bit devil's advocate here, because I know what the left, I know what Big Pharma is going to do. They're going to go all hands on deck on trying to disprove everything that Bobby Kennedy has been trying to do over the last couple decades, along with President Trump over the last year, of exposing the truth. And that's all we want, is the truth. But we are going to see the unbelievable kickback by Big Pharma. You got to understand, Big Pharma, I think, is the largest lobbyist in the world. So do you think they're just going to sit back and take all this information that they're trying to release, that they have literally been poisoning all of us for decades? Well, we're going to talk about a narrative today, and I'm going to show you some evidence, because I know what they are capable of. And for those of you who have followed me over the past 5 years, you have witnessed firsthand what they have tried to do to me with everything that we are doing, with the unconstitutional lockdowns, the mandates, the masks, and it goes on and on and on. So here, I'm going to show in a few minutes President Trump's video, and then we're going to talk about it. And in this video is with the NIH Geneticist and Biochemist laying it out, that vaccines are filled with toxic chemicals. And the one they're talking about in this video is thimerosal, which is the organic form of mercury. Okay. So for years, the establishment, they mocked parents, they silenced doctors. We witnessed what they did to doctors during COVID. They destroyed careers of anyone who dared to question Big Pharma and get in the way of their profits. But now, Bobby Kennedy, along with President Trump, they're trying to get the truth out. And it's coming from the very top. So this isn't a conspiracy anymore, folks. This is reality. And so let's get to the video, and then we're going to break it down. All right, so here's the video right here.
Show them the thimerosal bomb, which we keep in a metal container because we're a little afraid of it, and it's a very fine powder.
This is thimerosal, which is labeled very toxic, has cumulative effects, can cause damage to the kidneys, to the respiratory system, skin, to the nervous system. It specifically warns on here that it can cause reproductive and developmental toxicity, meaning that it can cause things like autism and other neurodevelopmental disorders. This is immensely toxic stuff.
And it's in vaccine.
And this is what's in the vaccine. It's important to realize we're talking about a whole range of products. Vaccines are a big one because, of course, you're directly injecting it. For example, this is tetanus vaccine. This one expires, it's a little outdated now, in 2007. And here's the thimerosal. 1 to 10,000 is a preservative. Perhaps the biggest one in the U.S., at least, that's for exposure to mercury is the influenza vaccine. Influenza vaccine is now recommended for all pregnant women, all infants, all children on a yearly basis. You're supposed
You
to
had last year's influenza? Understand that thimerosal is not added at the end. It's not like, well, that factory next year can make thimerosal free. Thimerosal, you either have to have a thimerosal free factory or you have to not have one. They add thimerosal at each step because the factory is not clean and not sterile. So you either have to have an expensive sterile factory where you don't need thimerosal, or you have to have one that produces thimerosal. It's going to need thimerosal or something the whole time. It needs to be stopped.
This is the influenza vaccine from Adventist Pasteur, their flu zone. Thimerosal, 25 micrograms of mercury per dose.
I'd like to point out that a lot of people didn't know, and I'm one of them. I've given 2,000 Rogam shots. I've been in vaccines for 35 years. I didn't know that Rogam had thimerosal in it. So I think a lot of the doctors were unaware. They were unaware that even the word thimerosal meant mercury.
Oh boy. Oh, it just makes me sick. Not me sick personally because of the decisions that I made for my family. I'm a chiropractor. We chose not to put any of that garbage into our kids and into our bodies. But my big thing is for all the parents out there who have unfortunately bought in to the CDC, their medical doctor, their pediatrician, and listen because they all believed, and we believe, that they have a Hippocratic oath to do no harm. And I have witnessed firsthand. I've been standing up against vaccines in my own clinic for the last 20 years, almost 20 years. I used to lecture on it. We had pediatricians in our community in Kalamazoo, Michigan, that would literally kick out patients if they didn't follow the CDC recommendations, because these clinics get huge bonuses. If over, I think 90%, I don't know what the exact number is, but if 90% of their clinic is vaccinated, they get huge, huge bonuses. So we're going to break this down. I'm not going to get into the science of all this because there's so much science on both sides. And that's why I always educate and try to empower my patients and parents and say, hey, dude, you got to do the information. You got to do the research. You got to look at the information, and then you're going to come to a gray area because there's information on both sides. And you're going to come right in the middle and you're like, well, just tell me what to do and I'll do it. And unfortunately, you're not going to get that kind of data because we have seen time and time again, they change the rules, they hide the research, they debunk the research and everything else. So what I'm going to do here today is not try to prove on whether or not this indeed, in fact, happens. I believe it does. I've made that decision as a father and as a doctor. However, I'm going to show you what they're going to do here in the future, because that's one thing that I have been really good at, is calling out the narrative. You know, I've done that ever since the beginning, and we're still batting 1,000, folks. Everything that we stood up for has been, in fact, proven to be true, okay? So let's go back and let's give an example, okay, of what they did about something called ivermectin, okay? Do you remember when Joe Rogan came out and talked about getting COVID and what CNN did to his complexion? So this starts the narrative of what the other side's going to do, okay? They are going to push back in such a huge way. This is life-changing for a lot of people. It truly is. But Big Pharma and their little minions and all the politicians, Republican and Democrat, you know who you are, you crooked sons of bitches. They're going to push back in such a big way. We've already seen it with what they're doing at the Senate hearings with Bobby Kennedy. I'm going to show another one here today, just to give an example. But let's refresh. Let's look back on what they did with ivermectin and what they said about it. So here's Joe Rogan and what CNN did to his complexion. Remember this?
The meds, monoclonal antibodies, ivermectin, Z-Pak, prednisone.
Look at that. Look at his complexion, and this is how dirty they are, okay? They made him almost look alien. The top video, and if you're listening to this podcast, they made him look like he's got some kind of disease shade complexion, okay? And the bottom was the original with his normal natural complexion, okay? So since he was taking ivermectin, that went against the narrative, didn't it? That went against the narrative. And so they fought nonstop against ivermectin. And so let's go a little further. Remember Cuomo the clown on CNN and what he said about ivermectin? Let's go back, all right, Well, first, we're going to show you that what he said about ivermectin, I think in 2024 in May, and he gets called out for basically bashing people like Joe Rogan and the rest of us because we were taking horse dewormer. All right. So let's continue with this narrative. Here we go.
What do they call it? Like a regular dose, whatever. They're trying to build up of ivermectin. Ivermectin was a boogeyman early on in COVID.
You couldn't talk about it.
That was wrong. We were given bad information about ivermectin. The real question is why? Everyone's going to say Joe Rogan was right. No, Joe Rogan was saying, yeah, he was right. But that's not what matters. What matters is the entire clinical community knew that ivermectin couldn't hurt you. They knew it, Patrick. I know they knew it. How do I know? Because now I'm doing nothing but talking to these clinicians who at the time were overwhelmed by COVID and they weren't saying anything. Not that they were hiding anything, but it's cheap. It's not owned by anybody, and it's used as an antimicrobial, antiviral in all of these different ways and has been for a long time.
For malaria for over almost 20 years.
Yeah. So, and my doctor, who is now my doctor, was using it during COVID on her family and on patients, and it was working for them. So they were wrong to play scared.
There was so much talk that they don't want you to take ivermectin. Ivermectin is the way to go. Take it. Joe Rogan got better from ivermectin. And by the way, I don't like what people did to Joe Rogan about ivermectin. I don't like it.
You did it.
No. Okay,
yes, you did.
Find the clips.
Dude, find the clips. You shamed Joe Rogan.
Find the
clips. You said he's taking horse dewormer. You and Don Lemon were chuckling at each other about it.
No,
I'll go find
first
the
of all,
clip.
you just saw the clips.
I watched
I'm
it.
not chuckling. I'm listening to Don. But
No. The
here's
clip
point.
I'm talking about wasn't on there, and it's absolutely
look,
there. Here, do we have it? Hold on. Let's play the clip.
Injecting drugs for animals and horse.
And people telling them to. Oh, my God. What person? You talk about cancel culture and who to shame. Ivermectin, a dewormer, really?
They are shaming themselves.
That's what it is.
They're shaming themselves.
So you're taking a dewormer right now.
This
Chris, you can't apologize.
Unbelievable, right? So let's move on and see what the FDA, our fearless FDA, what they said about ivermectin. So remember on the little tweet, they said, "You're not a horse. You're not a cow. Seriously, y'all, stop it. Why you should not use ivermectin to treat or prevent COVID-19. So the old FDA at the time, and we've been through this narrative time and time again. So this is what's happening in society. Everyone that has basically bought into the narrative of COVID, hook, line, and sinker, that refused to just take a little humble pie and just say, you know what, I made the wrong decision. They have dug their heels in, and no matter what we come out, what they say, they're never going to change. And that's just going to be 30-40% of the population. They don't want to be proven wrong, and that's fine. But for all of us who have been standing up against this hot garbage and stood up against just the billions of dollars of propaganda that was pushed at us on social media, the censorship, corporate media, calling people like me a quack. I'm not a real doctor. I'm a danger to the community. I'm advocating for the spread of disease. The list goes on and on and on. Okay. I'm here to warn you what's coming. That's what this whole purpose of this live. It's not to take a stand on vaccine or not. For those of you who follow me, you know what my stand is. My point is they are going to do everything they can to stop this from coming out, because it's going to not bring down Big Pharma. It's going to take a big chunk out of their pie, and they're not going to like it. They're not going to like it. And you got to remember, there's not going to be any liability for these folks, okay? They're not going to be any liability because of the 1986 Child Vaccine Injury Act, which, again, if you don't know this, wake up. There is no liability for Big Pharma if any of their vaccines damage, injure, or kill people. That's what Ronald Reagan signed into law, unfortunately. Okay, so there's not going to be any liability. People are like, oh, these people are going to be held accountable. They're not. But moving forward, that's where we can change. Because you got to remember, if you just are on the fence on some things, let me give you some logic and some common sense here. Okay, that's what I want to try to do. Let's just look at the U.S. CDC's recommended doses. This is a powerful graph. Very powerful. If you look from 1940 to 1960, there was 2 to 3 vaccines given. In 1983, there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 in 1983. So what happened after 1983? Obviously, you all that are watching this podcast right now on my live, you can see that there was a dramatic jump in the number of vaccines in 1983 to 2021 and 2021 to 2024. And obviously, the difference between 2021 and 2024 is the COVID vaccine, right? Now, look at this, just common sense. For those of us who are in our 40s, I'm 47, if you look at this chart, you got to look back to when we were younger, all right, when we were growing up. Are our kids healthier or sicker from when we grew up? The answer is obvious. Back when we were growing up, when you looked at your surroundings, your environment, your classroom, your school, there would be maybe one or two kids that you knew about that was allergic to peanuts, right? And there was like an urban legend that there was a child allergic to ice cream. And you're like, wow, that kid's life is over, right? So fast forward to today. Look at these kids. Look at the amount of disease processes that these kids have and the allergies that they have. Do you think that there's something going on? And it's more than nutrition. If you just look at this graph alone, you can obviously say, well, shoot, we're almost up from 13 from 1983 to over 100 in 2024. That's what we're injecting into our kids by the age of 18. And this isn't natural good food, folks. These aren't supplements. These are man-made chemicals directed into your children, directed into your body, bypassing this huge natural mechanism that God has made us called skin and directing that right into the bloodstream. Do you think there might be a consequence to that some way, somehow? Right? But remember, they don't give a shit because 1986, it's the 1986 National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act. We can dose as many as we want and as much as we want, and there's no liability. Here's Big Pharma spreading their Benjamins all over their own desk. That's what it is. There's no liability. So in your mind right now, they're not going to be held accountable. There's not going to be tribunals. There's not. There's not. But moving forward, the more we empower, the more we get people to stand up, that's where we can inspire change. And look, these dirty politicians, these corrupt sons of bitches are just as guilty as Big Pharma, okay? Because watch the Senate hearing, and there's many different Senate hearings with Bobby Kennedy that you can look up and how they're just pushing back against this guy. And God bless Bobby Kennedy for standing up for what's right, because he continues to stand up for what he believes in. But this is him just mentioning and talking about the pericarditis, I think, that the mRNA vaccine has caused, which all of us conspiracy theories were screaming from the rooftops as all this was happening to young people. And they were just saying, nope, it's wrong. It's false news. It's fake news, right? You guys are all conspiracy theories. And lo and behold, a year later, it comes out that, yeah, it does. There is a side effect called pericarditis from this garbage. So just watch the pushback that this guy gets.
What I said was accurate. What you said were lies. You described people
Senator,
moving the Titanic.
Senator, are you saying that the mRNA vaccine has never been associated with myocarditis or pericarditis in teenagers? Is that what you're trying to tell us?
I am simply trying to say that the people that you have put on that panel, after firing the entire...
You're evading the question.
No, I'm asking the questions here,
You're
Mr.
evading
Kennedy.
that question.
I'm asking the questions, Mr. Kennedy. I'm asking the questions for Mr. Kennedy on behalf of parents and schools and teachers all over the United States of America who deserve so much better than your leadership. That's what this conversation is about, Mr. Chairman.
Senator, they deserve the truth, and that's what we're going to give them for the first time in the history of that agency.
Well, God bless Bobby Kennedy. And that is just one of the examples of many of the pushback from these corrupt senators, these corrupt politicians. And there's going to be more because all these folks are getting money from Big Pharma, okay? Because Big Pharma wants to continue to make their trillions of dollars off this stuff. And this is the comical part, not comical, actually horrifying. The very stuff that they're injecting into you and the stuff that we're eating, right, is causing disease. And then they come up with the solution, right? They come up with a drug to combat that disease. So do you think there's more health or more money in health and wellness or disease? Of course, disease. They don't like healthy people. They want returning customers. And that's why as you see people age, they level up in age, right? What happens? Their filing cabinets, does it get filled with what? More medication or less medication? More and more and more and more. I see it all the time in my clinic. I have elderly that come in and they have 2 medications, and then there's 10 other medications to do what? Combat the side effects of the original 2 medications. Cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. That's all that Big Pharma does. That's all they care about. And so this is going to be huge. It is. They are starting to push back, but you can't imagine the amount of pushback we're going to get from Big Pharma. Okay. It's going to be astronomical. And I want to show you, because I think I was the first person to uncover this in the world. Okay. We'll say that. I don't know if that's for sure, but I did find them make a little slip. So this is how dirty these sons of puppers are. Okay. Let me see if I can find what I'm trying to look for. Is this it? Yes. I uncovered this when this happened. Nope, not that one. I got to go back. 1 second, folks. Let me get this and pause it. There we go. Let me blow it up for you. This is how dirty they are, okay? They actually went on their own website, the CDC, and changed the actual definition of what a vaccine was. The left picture, which it shows the definition of terms, okay? A vaccination is the act of introducing a vaccine into the body to produce immunity to a specific disease. Let me repeat that. This is big. Back in 2018, this was on their own website, what the definition of a vaccination and what they're designed to do. The act of introducing a vaccine into the body to produce immunity to a specific disease. Well, fast forward to September 1st, 2021, right? They changed it. The definition now is the act of introducing a vaccine into the body to produce protection from a specific disease. Holy cow. Do you understand how big that is? They actually went on and changed it. Why? Because I said this from the very beginning. Even when President Trump was pushing Operation Warp Speed, I was like, this is not a vaccination. The COVID vaccine is a therapeutic. A therapeutic. Because they said at the time, well, we're going to get to what they said and what eventually happened. It stops people from dying. That's what they eventually said the COVID vaccine did. Not in the beginning, they didn't say that, but in the end, they have admitted that's what it does. So that's a therapeutic, because a vaccination is supposed to prevent you from getting it. And they pushed this out so much. You remember what old Joe Biden and what the CDC director at the time said? Let me revisit that, folks. Here we go.
You're okay. You're not going to get COVID if you have these vaccinations.
Yeah.
Who have gotten their first dose, 51 million who have gotten their second dose, and we can kind of almost see the end. We're vaccinating so very fast. Our data from the CDC today suggests, that vaccinated people do not carry the virus, don't get sick, and that it's not just in the clinical trials, but it's also in real-world data. And yet, on the other side,
remember that. Holy cow. These people, I don't know how they sleep well at night. Because remember, for those of us who said we're not taking this garbage, and let's go back, because this is huge. Why didn't they call it a therapeutic? Why didn't they call it a therapeutic? Because then they would have been liable for what? Damages, death, side effects. They had to call it a vaccine so there wouldn't be liability. That's how crooked they are. It's disgusting. But that's what they're willing to do. They're literally willing to go out there and sneak their new definition, right? To sneak the new definition of what a vaccine is supposed to do. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Because remember what they pushed out at us. Holy cow. Here we go. It's the end of the world if we're unvaccinated. It's time to make an end-of-life plan. That was pushed out by corrupt corporate media, right? Unbelievable. In the same Newsweek put out there, what was it, 2 years later? 4 years later, right? 4 years later, then they admit that COVID vaccines heart risk warning update issued by FDA. I mean, folks, it's horrible. It really is. But for those of us who've been standing up against this garbage for many, many years, We know that's their game. We know it. Okay. So let's talk about what the narrative is going to be when this starts to go viral, which it already is. That's what I'm talking about. I don't think I'll be on YouTube much longer. They're going to take this video down. YouTube and TikTok are still communist, by the way. But that's just what it is, and I'm willing to push it out. So let's break it down, because now you're thinking like, oh my gosh, that whole vaccine list, right? Let me show it to you again. All these vaccines have thimerosal in it, the organic form of mercury. No, they do not. They do not have thimerosal in it. So let me give you the timeline, and I got it right here for you to know. I have my receipts, folks. Here we go. Removal of thimerosal from childhood vaccines. In July of 1999, the U.S. Public Health Service agencies, the American Academy of Pediatrics, recommend reducing or eliminating thimerosal in vaccine as a precautionary measure. A precautionary measure. Why? Because their science started revealing what? That thimerosal was jacking up kids and adults. So by 2001, thimerosal has been completely removed from all routinely recommended childhood vaccines for children age 6 and under, except for some inactivated influenza vaccines, which were still supplied in multi-dose vials. Okay, let me go on. Fast forward to June 26, 2025. The Centers for Disease and Prevention's Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices voted to recommend that all influenza vaccines be free of thimerosal. Okay, so shortly thereafter, they adopted this recommendations because of Bobby Kennedy. But my point is, what happened from 1999 to 2001, folks? What happened in that time? Well, at that time, the flu vaccine had thimerosal in it. And what do they give the kids every single year, and adults and elderly? There it is. Flu shot. Not all the flu shots. At the time, you could ask for thimerosal-free vaccines, and then they would give it to you. But if you weren't knowledgeable enough, not smart enough, because you've been lied to, if you weren't knowledgeable enough, because you did your own research, then you would say, hey, I don't want thimerosal in my vaccine. And they'd be, okay, here you go. But if you didn't do the homework, you would have got thimerosal every single year, every single flu shot. Because in the 2000s and 2020s, both versions were available, multi-dose vials with thimerosal and single-dose vials or pre-filled syringes. People who wanted a preservative-free option could request it. But do you think all those medical doctors, right? All those medical doctors were explaining this to patients? There are still pediatric clinics in the Kalamazoo area, I know for a fact, still pushing the COVID vaccine on kids. Hot garbage. These people, even some of my colleagues in my own profession do this garbage. Unbelievable. And it's funny, there's several of them that were calling me out in the state of Michigan, chiropractors, for standing up against COVID, the lockdowns and mandates. They said I was out of my scope of practice. And every time I try to find these people at convention to confront them, to have a friendly little conversation, they always duck and weave and they avoid me. But I will get you one day, and we are going to have a nice little conversation on why you were saying that garbage and not joining the movement, which you should have, because based on our own chiropractic philosophy, we have this internal wisdom called innate intelligence, folks, that allows you to express your God-given potential. That's just a whole different conversation, okay? So that's what I wanted to bring to you all today, is whether or not that this is true or not, there's going to be science on both sides. It's just going to be like the mask. Case in point. Remember how all the masks, we were constantly giving research on the decades of research on how masks don't work, stopping viruses, and then there'd be all kinds of other, research that would come out, and it's the sputum, and it's the spit, and it's all this blah, 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 blah. It was nonstop. We could never get through. That's the same thing that's going to happen with this garbage, unfortunately. But I want you to use a little common sense. I want you to see the narrative. I wanted to show you today what they're capable of and what they're willing to do to change the narrative. You got Clown Cuomo, who jumped on board Big Pharma wagon and was calling everyone that was taking ivermectin at the time that they were taking dewormer and they're crazy and everything else, and they're for the vaccine and everything else. And now they're saying, well, no, I was wrong. Well, the same thing's going to happen as this continues to come out. And Big Pharma is going to kick back in a big way. I guarantee it. I guarantee it. So I want to push out a narrative today to let you know what's coming down the pipe. Just because it's got released from President Trump doesn't mean it's all over. Again, it doesn't mean that Big Pharma is going to be held accountable. I don't think anyone's going to be held accountable, unfortunately. But who we can hold accountable is who we put in the office. Who we put in the office or recommend or to represent us and to stand up against this and stand for medical freedom. If anything you get from this, you should have a choice on what you inject into your body and into your kid's body. Your body, your choice, right? So it doesn't go against your own narrative and then they stand up. It's not you, it's little Susie down the street we're trying to save. Remember that garbage? Just goes on and on and on. But again, if you just want to look at common sense, just look at this. Ask yourself this question. If you're ultimate pro-vaccine, just ask yourself the simple question. Are kids today healthier than they were back then, back when we were growing up in the 70s and 80s? Yes or no? If you look at the science, no, they're not. And then you look at the correlation. You look at the correlation. Now, there's many different factors. Trust me. There's nutrition. There's everything else, what we've been eating in our food that Bobby Kennedy's trying to clean up. However, you can't deny this. And again, this isn't nutrition that they're injecting into kids' bodies and adults' bodies. This is man-made chemicals directly into the bloodstream. And a lot of these things are injected right into the bloodstream right when they're born and their blood-brain barrier isn't developed. What does that mean? Well, the blood-brain barrier is a separation from your brain tissue and your blood. When you're first born, you don't have that fully developed. So anything that's in the bloodstream is directly going to interact with brain tissue. Do you think it's good that you're injecting neurotoxins like aluminum? Nobody's talking about aluminum, right? Or thimerosal, but now they're taking it out, and I wonder why. Oh, we're just doing this as a precautionary measure. No, they know. And they know they got their hand caught in the cookie jar, and they're trying to clean it up. They're sending the cleaners in, folks, trying to make sure that they don't get exposed. Hold them accountable. Hold them accountable. And look, to all my patients and to all my chiropractors and for the medical doctors who are standing for truth, who have stood for truth, there's very few of you, unfortunately, but the majority of you, you know who you are, that push this garbage on the kids. Stand up and do what's right. And for my patients, for my parents, and for my chiropractors who stood alongside me throughout this garbage for the last 5 to 6 years, look, it's time to have conversations with your patients. If you haven't yet, because it's a little political, man, you have to. And the conversations is not, I told you so. Those aren't the conversations. It's not say, hey, look at now. I told you I was right. That's not the conversation. These people need some love right now. They need to be listened to. Some of them are going to vent. Some of them are going to be very angry because they've been lied to. They've been lied to. And I don't know what that would feel like, knowing that, holy cow, I followed that CDC recommendations and I've been injecting all that in my kids because my medical doctor told me I was supposed to. And if I didn't, that I was going to endanger the health of my kids. But now I'm finding out that all this stuff could potentially be causing all of my kids' disease processes and allergies and everything else that they're experiencing right now, or possibly even cancer. I would be very upset. I would have probably hurt a lot of people that did that to my kids. Now's the time for healing. Now's the time to have conversation and empower these folks to start making the right decisions, because there's going to be a lot of very angry people when this stuff comes out. And that's what they're scared of. That's what they're scared of. Because you hurt people's kids, people act out in different ways. They truly do. So for my doctors out there, have conversations, direct them to places that need to go to maybe start to rebuild that immune system, supplementation, the chiropractic adjustment, that positive resonance that we always talk about in chiropractic philosophy, what causes disease processes, thoughts, traumas, and toxins. And so you have to be a little bit of a therapist now, and you're going to have to direct these people and empower these people by giving them information, not telling them I told you so, but actually listening to them, being an ear, and then supporting them from there on out. That's what I'm going to do. That's what I've been doing to all of my patients for the past almost 2 decades that I've been in practice, okay? I've never force-fed any information down people's throats. People who came into my clinic that vaccinate their kids, I said, hey, look, here's the information from the other side. Your job as a parent is to read both sides, make an educated decision. And my job as your doctor means to teach, is to provide that information, then support your decision. I don't have to like your decision, but I'll support it because guess what? It's your child, and I'll support it. I'm not like the other pediatricians in the community that have literally been kicking out patients because they haven't followed that CDC guidelines. Every single one of them. Have fun sleeping at night. You know what? I know I'll sleep well at night. So for all my doctors out there, do the right thing. Educate, empower your patients. That's how you can make a difference. And then hold these politicians and who's running for office accountable. Let's see if they believe in medical freedom and what that means. Look what Florida's doing right now. And it's funny, Florida, again, Governor DeSantis is the one leading the way with this. Just like he did during COVID, Governor Noem did too. Let's give her some credit, because she's on the Trump team now. But Governor DeSantis, one of the states that stood up against the lockdowns, didn't he? He said, yep, bought into it in the beginning, but we're never going to lock down again. And holy cow, did they try to crucify him, right? COVID hell is upon Florida. And Florida had the most heavily populated elderly folks. I think that's right. And those are the folks that were, any flu virus or any virus in itself is dangerous to elderly. And they had the heaviest population. They still did better than New York and California, right? Weird. But Governor DeSantis, again, is leading the way. I'm a fan, not of all his policies, but I'm a fan for him standing up for medical freedom and following through with what he's done for years with not only the pandemic, but with mandates and everything else. So unfortunately, in the state of Michigan, we're still back in the Stone Age with that kind of leadership. And hopefully in this next election cycle, we get the right leadership. Okay? That is for gosh darn sure. And before I go today, I got to get my man a shout out. You see where he's at. Dave Garr, one of our patriots from D-Town. Got to give him a shout out. His business. Folks, look, if you're visiting the Detroit area, you got to call these folks up. They'll give you a tour. It's a dream limousine and sedan serving Southeast Michigan for over 20 years with late model sedans, SUVs, vans, limos, and party buses up to 40 passenger capacity. Woo! Sounds like a party. Guided tours of Detroit complete with sub sandwiches and Detroit's own better made potato chips. Delicious. The dream limousine and sedan, any part, any size, any time. You can visit them. It's in the description at dreamlimo.com. Your number is 734-542-6800. Give them a call. See D-Town. Eat those potato chips. Life is good. All right. But I wanted to get on here today and give you up-to-date, accurate, truthful information and what? Give you the narrative of what's coming down the pipeline. Still batting 1,000 over here, folks. Still batting 1,000. Let's keep it up. Have a great day. God bless you. God bless the state of Michigan. Of course, and always, God bless these United States. Until next time. Bye-bye.